Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the new TRN M10. So a few weeks back, when I ordered the TRN VX, at the same time I ended up with the M10, which just had been announced. So I had them ship both of them, and I think that actually delayed shipping both of them and getting to me, but here it is, and I'm super glad it came. And I think I mentioned this in the open box. The rumor was that the M10 is basically a repackaged TRN ST1. Instead of the over-the-ear monitor style, it's this, hang-down bullet style. And I'm pretty sure that, I don't have 100% confirmation, but pretty sure that is the case. So this was sent to me from the AK Audio store on Aliexpress. It's showing $12.98 today, but in about 13 hours from when I recorded the video, it'll be about $10.86. So Aliexpress is doing yet another sale. So be careful with, not paying attention to their ads, because they usually are telling you when the price will drop. And I've never had the case where it didn't drop to $10.86 in 13 hours, because it's going to be a major Aliexpress sale as well. So hang on if you're in the mood to buy the M10. Wait till it's $10.86, or message the AK Audio store and ask if there's any promotions on it. There may be. So here's so I guess first, so this is what the stock cable looks like, and this is the other ST1. This is the stock cable. The way I have it now, I've got kind of 1-in-1. This is the M10. This is the ST1. This is a nice HDK 16-core cable. People had asked me in the past, why do you buy 2-pin instead of QDC or blonde, something specific? And because you could do dumb things like this, and you can see if the M10 and the ST1 do indeed sound the same. So I did it just to try it because I had a cable and I could. So let's quickly run through some of the important bits on the M10. So before we get into that, so back when I did a video on the ST1, it's actually one of my favorite $10 IEMs, and mostly because back then there was a TRN ST1 and then there was the IM2, and the IM2 was like a mini V90. It was a bit too recessed. They seemed to be doing some fine tuning on some parts that weren't quite as nice as the V90, so you ended up with kind of a similar tuning, but the parts weren't really all that nice. The ST1 was totally different. It was this, V-shaped, vocals forward, great sounding, $10, can't go wrong, just sounded great on kind of universally everything. So I really liked the ST1. I liked the ST1, even though it was half the price of the IM2. I liked it way more than the IM2. So I was kind of excited when I heard that the M10 was going to be an ST1, because I thought perhaps that this new shape would actually offer some kind of, audio difference. The way the alignment of the BA and the dynamic driver is slightly different than the ST1, but it pretty much sounds exactly the same. And so we're going to kind of spin through this, knowing that it's still, outside of the Sony MH755. The ST1 is probably still, if not my favorite $10, the MH755 is always going to be my favorite sub-10. That's just getting so hard to find now, reliably, not being a fake, and under $10 is super hard to find it now. But so in this $10 range, the ST1 has always been on my list in that budget range. So what's interesting about the ST1 is it's a $10 IEM, but it's actually tuned pretty well. If you've ever bought or purchased a random $10 IEM in the past on Amazon, you get it and something is really off or it sounds horrible. Like usually there's distortion on one side, the bass, breaks up into just random garbage, or the treble, breaks up into distortion or sibilance or whatever. So what the ST1 did is they basically seemed to know where the limits were, and the music rarely ever gets beyond those limits. Even though the bass isn't the highest quality, it never turns into random bass noise and distortion. And the treble, even though it gets a bit crushed at the top end, doesn't really turn into anything fatiguing. It doesn't go wacky where you're just going to listen to it and cringe. it's, tuned within the bounds of the hardware, and I think that was very intentional, and I think it worked really well on the ST1, and again on the M10. It's $10 that sounds really good for $10. It's not kind of a roll the dice and we hope this sounds good. Within the constraints of the hardware, it sounds really good. So what I always liked about the ST1 and the M10, the vocals are a bit forward, but they almost universally sound good. You just don't run across too many songs where you would say, oh, that voice is too far back, too recessed, too loud, too shouty. It's just got this universal midsection that's kind of appropriate for the hardware, and it just sounds good. You can just go down your playlist from the beginning to the end, and you're probably not going to find a song that sounds horrible. And so that's kind of what I look for in this $10 grab and go, the travel pair, the pair that's a backup. You just want something that's going to sound good on movies, music, podcasts. It's got that kind of tuning with the vocals forward. It's just going to work really well across all these different use cases. So if you're looking for a leaned out, clarity-driven, kind of like the latest BL05 or the VX or any of this latest trend, not so much in the ST1. Think about last year. This is, a full bass dynamic driver, very rich, lots of bass, lots of quantity, and you'll get lots of bleed through the midsection. So, yeah, this is not a leaned out BL05 or a KB04 or KB ear diamond. This is a V shape from last year. So soundstage, it's pretty much average. It's pretty good for $9 though. Just beyond your ears. So I think especially TRN and the V90 kind of bothered me because it was just a bit too compressed. I don't actually think the ST1 soundstage is all that far from the V90. It just sounds good for $9. It's not going to feel too compressed. The instruments will be at your ears, a little beyond your ears, pretty much where you would expect your average $10 or $20 IEM to be. So average good is what I would call that. So the biggest sacrifices at $9 is the quality at both ends. So the bass is there's lots of quantity. So the bass either seems like it's rumbling. Sometimes it's less rumble, and sometimes it's kind of off. You don't get like kind of these smooth transitions and textures. It's very much a bass on, bass off. So the quality, I think that's the sacrifice. Not too much texture to the bass, but there's plenty of it. And then at the treble end, same thing. You get it's kind of extended, but it feels crushed to me. Lots of sounds feel very compressed, and you're not exactly sure what that instrument is sometimes. And so kind of at both ends is where I would say the biggest sacrifice at $9 is. So lastly, here's an odd thing. So I have my ST1, and I had it on one cable, and I had the M10 on another cable, and I was switching back and forth because I wanted to say, were these really the same driver or not? Do they sound similar? And they actually didn't sound similar, and I was freaked out a bit because I'm like, I don't know, I think that's what I read. So went back and forth because I had the ST1 on this 16-core cable, and the M10 was on the original stock. And there's a song by Mabel called Don't Call Me Up, and I had tons of problems playing this on the VX. It was kind of driving me nuts how kind of shouty and almost too trebly her voice is. It just never really sounded relaxing and enjoyable on the VX. And it was just that song. So on this cable, it's kind of closer to the VX than the stock cable. The stock cable is actually a more relaxed, less treble sound. That the high end is definitely toned down on the stock cable compared to this. So I was kind of shocked. I didn't think kind of off the bat that there'd be that much of a difference, but if you go back and forth, I was kind of surprised about how much it made a difference on this guy. So random fact, don't know what else to say about that, but if you have an ST1 or an M10, give a cable swap a try and see if it makes any difference for you. See if you want kind of a more relaxed This is almost a more relaxed, bassy sound. This kind of gave you a little more treble, so it's a little more not as relaxed, a little more intense. There's a little more brightness to it, but I actually kind of like the more relaxed sound on that for the most part. So stock cable is pretty good for the M10. So again, thank you guys for tuning in, and well, see you next time.